Hi, David Vizard here, and you guys are watching PowerTec 10. Just as a reminder, this is the channel that gives you the straight griff, no BS. And we also kind of uncover some dirt when necessary. Now, that may be just what we're doing in this episode. I wouldn't say that it was really bad dirt, but it's edging that way anyway. If you go back to episode 106, you'll see that I questioned whether or not too many cold air boxes were less than functional than they could be, or they didn't offer any real gain over the stock. Now, I'm talking about primarily EcoBoost Mustang cold air boxes. That's the 2.3 4-cylinder. Now, I will say that I've tested cold air boxes on my truck. K&N cold air system on that, and that netted about 8 horsepower at the rear wheels, so that was functional. But there is a whole raft of cold air boxes and so-called performance enhancing air intake systems for the EcoBoost. I've got some interesting news for you. I suspect very strongly from the evidence that I've so far turned up that most of them are nothing but decoration. Now, they may work if you've got a really high output motor, but not necessarily so. For instance, the Steeda cold air box for the EcoBoost is a real expensive piece, and they sell it with a tune to go with it, and they're claiming 54 horsepower increase. Now, my contention there, and I haven't tested it yet, my contention there is that it's the tune that's getting the power, not the airbox itself. Now, I would like to put this to the test, but can I get hold of Steeda's PR guy? Hell no. I've tried on numerous occasions to get him to give me a call back. Haven't seen anything yet. So, Mr. Steeda PR guy, please get in touch with me, because I know that Steeda makes some good products, but I need your help to be able to test them. So, give me a call. Anyway, there's a whole raft of other ones out there that probably work well at higher power outputs. But I'm looking at this cold air box now in terms of a stock or mildly modified 2.3 EcoBoost Mustang. Let's take that as our framework for our test here and see exactly what we have. Well, here we are at our big flow bench. We call this our Dreadnought flow bench. And it'll take this kind of oversized flow bench from normal to be able to flow air filters, especially when we get to high performance ones. Now, here's our two guinea pig filters. This is a brand new, as installed by Ford Motor Company filter. Can't quite read the brand on there, but this is definitely a K&N here. Now, K&Ns have come in for some pretty, how shall I say, stout criticism. We're going to see just how much of that they deserve and how much is just a question of misrepresentation. But before we do that, I need to show you the flow bench. So let's take a look at the flow bench, because you cannot just flow an air filter on a typical cylinder head flow bench just as is. There's a catch, and I'll tell you a story that relates to that. As you can see, I've made up this fixture which the filter fits nicely into. And I've sealed it round the bottom here with clay. But I've also put this big clay ring in here that you can see. Now I want you to look at this here. This tube, this little tube here, comes out here and it feeds into this manometer, which will read in 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 of an inch depression from 0 to 29 inches of water. Now, here's where we have to be a little, how shall I say, careful about flowing air filters. And I've got a story to tell you about that, because I've got plenty of stories at my age. First off, when you flow a cylinder head, it measures the pressure difference between atmosphere here and down in the box here. In here is the deal that couples up to the manometer, which reads the pressure difference across the cylinder head. Now normally that's 28 inches, and this bench we're setting it up for free floating, but that's neither here nor there at the moment. Now here's the problem. This K&N filter here is capable of flowing more air than that hole. So if I measure the pressure difference from the filter itself to the bottom there as per a cylinder head, I'm not flowing this filter, I'm flow testing the hole. Now here's the story. Many years ago, probably 30 now, S&B Filters brought out a lawsuit against K&N for exaggerating their flow figures. Well, it turned out, well, here's what happened. K&N's attorney contacted me, and he was, you know, he wasn't a permanent attorney for them. He was just taken on for this job of defending against S&B Filters. And he told me that they were getting smaller flow figures by a large amount than K&N were advertising. I quickly realized that their Superflow 600, I believe it was, they were measuring the airflow from this side of the filter to the other side here. And what they were actually doing was flow testing this hole. When you put a 14" by 4 filter on, it flows something like at 2 inches of water, it flows something like 4,500 to 5,000 CFM. That's the filter, if you test it right. But the hole here doesn't. So S&B were flow testing those filters that K&N were advertising as 4,000 odd CFM, but S&B were only getting about 2,000 CFM, i.e. the size of the hole. Now, this is the bit that I was a bit ticked off at. I told their attorney straight away that S&B were flowing the hole in the flow bench because they didn't have their flow bench set up right. And that would have fixed the case right there. But he waited over a month before he told the guys at K&N that that was what was going on, just so he could get another month's income out of them, which I thought was not really kosher. But anyway, I guess that's attorneys for you. Now I've got another case like this. I had a lady friend of mine, was the wife of a very close friend of mine, and she decided that she wanted to be an attorney. Well, she went through and did all of her exams and all that. She's a pretty smart lady, and just whistled through all of that. And anyway, I didn't see my friend. I didn't go to his house for maybe about 2 years, although I spoke to him very often on the phone. Well, when I went to his house, I said to his wife, well, how's the attorney business going? She says, oh, I gave that up. And I said, well, why was that? You passed your exams with flying colours. Oh, she said, yeah, that was for sure. But she says, I had a hard time telling who the bad guys were. Makes you think, doesn't it? Anyway, on with the flow test. Here's the stock filter, and here is what it will flow. Stock filter, 302 CFM at 2 inches. I'll put across the top here what that is at 28 inches. That's what cylinder heads are flowed on. The K&N at 2 inches of depression flowed 50% more air, 450. Again, I'll put that flow number across the top here. What did the fixture flow? I'll have to calculate that, but again, without a filter on at all, the number goes across the top. So you can see there's a little more to flow testing air filters than meets the eye here. But we've now established that this thing only flows 2/3 of what this does, but we haven't finished yet. As this gets dirty, the flow drops off. This type of filter is what we call a tack barrier filter. In other words, it's tacky paper with very, very, very small holes in it. When a particle of dirt sticks to the hole, which it will do, that hole is no longer active to be able to flow air. So the flow of this filter will go down permanently. This filter is an active filter. Now, K&N aren't the only ones to do active filters, but I have to say that every single filter that I've come across that's an active filter is a copy of K&N. Now, just so that you know, the S&B filter isn't. It's a tack barrier filter, and it doesn't filter that well. Now, I think I've explained that this type of filter filters by those fibers in there crossing each other like this. So as the engine pulses, so it makes those fibers move like that, and they sweep the air. Now you will get some channels, they'll say, look at the holes, the size of the holes in these filters. Now I'll hold it up to the light to show that. That doesn't matter. The size of the holes is almost irrelevant. Those holes can be up to 10,000ths of an inch, sometimes more. The dirt won't go through. All of these filters have passed the SAE dirt test. In other words, feed them dirt and they'll feed it like this. Now, it is harder for a K&N to do that, go through the SAE dust test, because the flow is steady flow. And what happens is, it opens the fibers like this, so the holes get bigger. It is not a pulsating flow. So this is not being used in the correct manner. Now, K&N realized that they still had to test on the standard dirt test deal. Forget what SAE number it is. So what they did to make this flow better under steady state conditions, they added an extra layer of cotton. So instead of having 2 layers, it's 3, and that got them through. Now in practice, they filter a lot better. Now there's going to be people who say, oh, I put one of these on and there was dirt inside the filter. Let me tell you something. I did a test on the Baja 500 with a K&N filter on a Baja boat. I controlled that filter test. It went through all of that volcanic dust in Baja, and when it had done 500 miles of that, I inspected it. No dirt inside. People who were running paper filters like this had them collapse because they were so clogged up. So they not only ingested a lot of dust. I also ingested some of the filter as well. That bug with a filter like this had no sign of any grit-induced wear. Now these aren't K&N's tests, these are my tests. Any induction system prior to the turbo or carburetor or fuel injection throttle body is composed basically of two parts: the airbox assembly and the filter. Well, we've dealt with the filter. We haven't shown which filter is best. We've just looked at the stock one and the K&N, and we can see the K&N is way better. But trust me, I've tested a lot of filters, and K&N has its equals out there, but they're the copies. There's a green one out there that's just as good as K&N one. I can't remember what it's called, but there's a couple of other brands. But if you're not sure, buy a K&N. Now let's get on to the airbox. Now in episode 106, I kind of had a gripe about airboxes, saying that they're all black, and that shouldn't be so. We've got two things to contend with here: airflow and CFM, plus temperature. Now then, any air filter box that is black is the opposite end of being good. And it's all finished in nice black crinkle finish. Well, the fact that it's a crinkle finish conducts more heat than if it was a smooth finish. So that's not good. Also, those crinkle black things, they look good while they're clean. They don't look good when they're dirty. And I think in that, to that extent, I advise that you get that red hose that goes from the air filter box on a EcoBoost Mustang, and I'm focusing on that at the moment, and run that to the turbo. That, as far as I know, is the best one in terms of thermal and flow. It dropped something like, I think it was 47 degrees out of the charge temperature, as well as flowing better. The air raid one flows about as well because it's the same shape, but it's black and crinkled. So what's all this filter testing worth in performance gains? Well, we have got a lot of draggy data, and although the draggy unit is accurate itself, our big problem is consistent start. We still have not ironed out a good consistent 0 to 60 foot time with our EcoBoost Mustang. So what we've got to do here is something that's statistically representative. So a lot of work went into taking the average 8th mile time, and in round numbers, the K&N filter over the stock filter was worth just a little shy of 1/10 of a second, and on the quarter mile about 1.2, maybe 1.3 tenths. How much does that look like in terms of car's length? Just check the illustration up here. This is a gauge of what the two otherwise identical cars would go through the lights at on the 8th mile. So you can see the K&N filter is worth about 10 to 12 feet advantage over one using stock paper filter. Now let's deal with the box. Does that air filter box need replacing? Episode 106 does have tests you can do to any air filter box to find out whether it's restrictive or not. Just using a milk jug, water with some dye in it, a tape measure, a piece of wood, and some screen washer hose. Now, I, in that video, said that I would not going to do it with that because I've got a highly accurate electronic manometer, which I coupled up, went out and did some tests. Now, here are the results of those tests. Now, first off, let me say that the motor in the Mustang, I estimate it's about 260-ish, maybe 270 horsepower. So it's a bit more than stock. That's at the wheels, by the way. Now, with the stock air filter in, the airbox flowed as measured on the engine side of the filter, and the depression for it was 3.9 inches of water at peak power, which is about 5,500, 52 to 5,500. The K&N filter was 1.9 inches of water. No filter, we couldn't measure anything. It looked like there might be about 0.0102, but probably less than that. So what we can say is here is the airbox itself for a stock engine is more than adequate. So why would you want to buy something to put on that is, if it is better, a bigger capacity? Because the engine doesn't even fully utilize the stock one. Now you might say, yes, but some of these others have bigger filters in, and they may not drop 1.9 inches of water. Well, the interesting thing is here that air filters are flowed at 2 inches of water, and that's what they. And the reason that number has been chosen is because at 2 inches of water depression out of, and the atmosphere is 403 odd, I think it is. 2 inches of water, you cannot measure the power drop caused by that. So even if you go from a K&N filter to no filter, you'll have a really, really hard time seeing the difference. So that's that reason there. Now let's look at the box. Can we improve it? Let's assume that we are going to hop the engine up a bit. Well, that's good, because we can make some minor improvements in the flow. 2 places. One, the immediate lip where the air comes into the airbox has got a sharp edge, so we can round that off, but of course we could break through into the outside of the airbox, so we will need to modify that part to be able to get a round surface. The other thing we can do is to pick up the air directly from the grill from an air scoop pointing forwards, like this one I'm just going to show up here. And we're going to do a test on that to see how much ram air affects it compared with non-ram air. That's easy to do. We just put a plate over the front of that and it will simulate what it was stock. Now then, let us now look and see where we need to go here. First, the simple mods to fix the heat. That warrants a video on its own, as does installing that ram air deal. Right, so that will be our next videos on this particular subject. Then we'll dyno test it to see what difference we've made. I think that the temperature deal will make quite a big difference, and the fact we can pick up the air directly from the front will also help. So what we will see on the dyno, unless we get some fans that can blow at 150 miles an hour, won't quite represent what we have on the track. Anyway, that's it for this edition of PowerTec 10, and I will hopefully see you in the next video, where we will go into how to make our airbox quieter and more effective, both in terms of temperature and flow. Now you might say, well, I want a noisy air filter. Well, that might be you, but I'm trying to build a sleeper, right? I do not want to hear that engine. I do not want to hear the exhaust. I just want that car to go gone. We're going to give it a new nickname. I think I mentioned this before. We're going to call it the Whispering Stallion. We'll see how that goes down at the drag strip. Thank you for watching. don't forget to subscribe, get notified, share, and comment. Thank you.